Welcome. In this video we're going to be taking a quick look at Cyrus, a epic grade DPS class Elune. Looking in at his base stats at 6 stars, he has a decent HP of 26.6k, a nice attack at 4.7, and PDEF and MDEF at 2.9 and 2.8k. His attack speed at 103 is a little bit on the slow side, but he does get in a little additional crit stat to make it a little bit easier to build him for damage. When he's maxed out at +5, his HP does go up to a pretty nice 39.9k with an attack at 7.1, which is pretty good for an epic grade. His PDEF MDEF ends at 4.4 or 4.3k, which isn't bad, but it is something you're going to have to focus on with other gear. Looking in at his skills, his first skill is a pretty standard just physical damage skill. For DPS it does good damage, and as it gets up to the max at +6, the damage goes up to a pretty significant 920 plus 158% of his attack as physical damage, so he does hit pretty hard with just his basic skill split. Moving on to a special skill, this one is a buff for him. It's a 2 soul skill, so it doesn't take a lot of souls to use this, but it is a good buff. It's a soul effect, so it can't be stripped. This soul effect grants immunity to all status effects for 2 turns, which is really good when you're fighting certain types of Elunes that want to inflict status effects on you. So he is good in that respect because you can't CC him and you can't remove this buff to stop him, so it's very difficult to do anything to him. You don't have to worry about sleeps, paralyzes, stuns, or even taking debuffs when attacking something, such as if you attack a Balder, you don't have to worry about getting that blaze effect on you because he has immunity for 2 turns. And since this buff is only 2 souls, you can spam it pretty frequently. This also gains an enhanced buff that increases his attack by 10% for 2 turns when the user receives a status effect inducing attack while this is active. So if he is hit with something that tries to put a status effect on him, instead he just gets an attack buff instead of any type of effect done to him. When the skill is leveled up to the max at 6, the immunity goes to 3 turns, which is very nice, which means you don't have to use it spam it so much to buff. And the attack buff that he gets is also 3 turns, but goes up to a nice 25%, making him a nice way to get that extra attack on him to do more damage. So this can make him pretty good at doing a lot of extra damage. His ultimate skill, Blade Storm, again, this is a frontline only skill, just like his normal skill, so nothing in the back until you kill the tanks. This one attacks 8 times, dealing a total of decent amount of damage as physical. When attacking an enemy with less than 20% HP, the attack will always deal the maximum damage that you can, which is going to be based on his passives. We'll go over in a second. When the skill is leveled up to the max at +6, the damage goes up to a very nice 1950 by almost 400% of his attack, 396% as physical damage, and this one now changes when the attack an enemy below 30% HP, the attack will always deal max damage. So this makes this a very useful type skill for doing a lot of damage to something. It is physical damage, so you might have trouble with some tanks with him, but it's not bad, and he does do a lot of damage with this attack, and with his special skill it's hard to control him. Now let's go ahead and look at his passives. This one, Intimidate. What this one does, his attacks don't miss. No evasion. In other words, the other team can't evade. But the attack damage is it'll go between 50% of his attack to 150% of his attack. The minimum damage increases equal to the user's accuracy rate. So the more accuracy you give him, and the higher accuracy percentage, that's going to be the minimum damage. So the more accuracy you give him, the more of his damage that you'll have. So the less of the minimum damage. So if you can get him with an accuracy buff or just high base accuracy, even though he never misses anyway, so you don't need the accuracy on him, what this does is just increases his minimum damage. Since he can't miss, he does have a chance to do lower than normal damage, which is 50% of his damage. So getting that accuracy up. If you can get him with a buff to above 50% accuracy, then he'll always do at least 100% of his damage, still capping out at 150. But this skill is really nice because his attacks don't miss. So he would be, because of that, it would be nice to use him against a Reaper, but you can't use him against a Reaper because Reapers are in the back line and he can only attack front line. So he can't attack the Reaper anyway until you kill the front line. But then once you kill the front line, the Reaper no longer has its passive evasion because the front line is entirely dead. So at that point, anything can hit the Reaper anyway. So as much as he would be nice to have as at least one of his skills able to attack a Reaper in the back and not miss, sadly that's not the case with him. So it is kind of a drawback or an oh well with him, but it is something to keep in mind and think of instead of just trying to pick him into a Reaper. His second passive, Executor, this one slaughters everything in sight with determination to, okay, when attacking a target with a lower HP ratio than the user, in other words, less ratio, not actual number, but the percentage of it, than what he has, then the damage increases proportionate to the difference in HP ratio. So if he has, say, if he has 100% of his HP and he's attacking something with 50% HP, say at half HP, then the damage increases by 50% of, it's proportionate to that difference, but it's a 50% difference, so it does go up by quite a bit, so his damage can get really high because of this passive. Now, if he's taken damage and his HP is low and he's attacking something, then he doesn't say, like, if he's at 50% HP and the person he's attacking has 100% HP, he's not going to get this. But it is based on the percentages of your HP, not just the actual value itself. So even if, let's say, you have him at, say, 50k HP in the battle, and the enemy that you're attacking is, say, let's say they're a 100k HP tank, but they're down to say 75% HP and he's still at 100% HP, even though they have 75k HP and you still have 50k HP, you're still going to get that increase in damage because there's a 25% difference in the ratio. So he's at 100%, they're at 75%, so there's still that 25% difference. So even though their HP is higher, you're still going to increase in damage because they're at a lower ratio than him. So keep that in mind. It's not based on the number, it's based on the ratio. Passive 3, this one, the Flow of Battle. What this one does, after receiving a turn, he gains a soul effect which immediately increases his attack by a random value between 1% to 30%, and it removes when his turn ends. So as soon as he gets a turn, he gets a soul effect that gives him an extra attack buff. So this means that he can have attack buffs already stacked, and then he'll get an additional attack either by 1% up to 30%. It's random, so it can be low, it can be high. He can get a really crazy amount, or he can get a low amount, but whatever it is, it's always at least 1%. So there's always that extra amount that can give him an extra buff, and it's a soul effect, so it can't be blocked, it can't be stopped, it's going to happen. Looking at the skill gen effects for him, the first skill is a pretty standard does nothing type skill. So the skill gem effect of this one, 5% of reducing the target's physical defense by 10% for 2 turns. This isn't a very useful buff. It's not any type of CC, it's not really any type of help. It's just a physical defense reduction by 10% for 2 turns. So you don't really need to do that. Anything that would just increase his damage. The red, orange is still good for him because it's still physical damage, crit rate. So that does help him do more damage. So it's not a bad idea to go with this skill gem set, but doing it specifically just for this type of effect really doesn't matter. So you can either go with just more flat raw damage and go full red, or you can go with like a full orange or a red, orange or something to that effect to have the higher crit rate and to have the more damage, because the bonus effect on this one is pretty useless. For his Rallying Cry skill, this one is his self buff. So this one, when you use it, it reduces damage received by 5% for the duration of Rallying Cry. This is somewhat useful because it's a damage reduction to him as well as that ability. Now the yellow affects the amount that he gets for this effect. So the basically the attack buff portion of it, it's going to affect that. So going yellow, yellow, yellow isn't bad, but the reduced damage amount while this is active, and this goes up to a 3-turn activity, going with the yellow, yellow, violet is not a bad idea for this because he does get reduced damage that way. So it's a little bit, makes him a little bit tankier, not by a lot, but since he is an epic and he does have low base stats, that 5% reduced damage is going to be helpful for him. As far as the last one go now, his ultimate skill, this one is a 10% chance of reducing the cooldown by 1 turn. Now, it's a low chance. It is a hard-hitting skill, but it is a low chance of happening at only 10%. So red, red, orange. It's, I mean, the skill gem recommended is not bad because it is still physical damage, crit rate, but you could go with full orange set if you want the high crit rate. You could go with full reds if you want the high just base damage. So whatever you want to go on this one is kind of up to you, what you feel is going to be better for it. But the recommended, it's not like, oh yeah, that's definitely helpful to him. No, it's just a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown by 1 turn. So it doesn't even just remove the cooldown. It's only a 10% chance to make it so you can use the skill 1 turn faster, which isn't that significant because it's still only a frontline skill anyway. It's not like you're picking off targets in the back with it. So as far as that goes, not a big deal. Now as far as gear goes with him, same thing with Dimension Slate. He's a DPS attack. You want to, whatever attack you can get on him, any type of attack you can get, you want to do that so it increases his damage. Accuracy is the other stat you want to get a lot of because of the way his passive works. So you want to get him with as much accuracy as you can so that his attacks don't do, you know, negative damage, basically a lower amount than base. You don't want it to do the, you know, less than 100% of his base attack. That way he's always going to be a strong attacker. So you want to get that accuracy up as high as you can so that you can do that damage, the higher damage. It's nice that he doesn't miss, but for most of the teams that you're going to be fighting, missing is not going to be a problem. The only time that he would be useful against hitting something where you're worried about missing is against the new legendary tank May, where she's basically built around evasion. You don't have to worry about him missing attacks on her because he just doesn't miss. So, you know, he's good for damaging her without having to worry about missing. He's also good against Baekwanjo, which is the other male epic tank, which is an evasion type tank, because he doesn't miss on that one either. He's good for attacking Mikazuki's, because Mikazuki has that extra chance of evading attacks. So he is good for attacking her too, because he doesn't miss attacks. So you don't have to worry about it. He has, you know, he can hit them. But since he is a frontline only attacker until you kill the front line, most of the time those Elunes other than the Mei tank are going to be in the back line anyway, and you know, you're going to need other things to hit them, not him. So his usefulness in that regard is limited until you can kill the tank. That's gonna be it for this one. He's not a, Cyrus isn't a bad Elune. He's pretty good. His damage is really high and is really nice. So he is pretty useful for early game because he can do a lot of damage and he can, you know, dish it out pretty well. So he's not too bad to use as a high damage Elune if you're starting off as a good DPS. But he does have some nice things. He never misses attacks, so you don't have to worry about anything evading attacks from him. He'll always hit them. So in some cases, when you're doing adventure mode, you know, you might come across, you know, one of those Baekwanjos or something as one of the little mini bosses and one of the stages that you got to kill, and he's good for that because you never have to worry about missing. So that's gonna be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, let me know and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.